Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys hanging out with me a little bit and checking the video out. And guys, got the boat hooked up this morning, getting ready to head to Stockton Lake. I got my second tournament of the year this weekend. Gonna go up and I'm gonna practice today, and can't practice tomorrow, and I'm practice Saturday. So I'm gonna have 2 different practice days. And what I want to do in today's video is I want to give you guys some tips and advice on how not only to practice for a tournament, but how to basically prepare for a day in the water. It's like, right now, I've got a bunch of stuff going on in my mind about what I want to do when I get to the lake as far as what could possibly work. And I just sort of want to go through my system of how I approach a day on the water, whether it be trying to locate fish for a tournament or just trying to catch some fish for fun. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. Also, guys, a couple quick housekeeping tips before we get started. Just a reminder, Solar Bat has still got the Get Ready for Spring sale going on my Signature Series glasses here, my RB2s and 3s. I'll have them in the link in the description, the Solar Bat link. If you guys would like to pick up a pair, I'd suggest these high contrast yellow lens, man. That's my favorite. And also, guys, you may have heard about it, but we've got my boat for sale through Branson West Marine right now. Anybody interested in this, in my Vexus 1980 aluminum? Absolutely love this boat here, right here, guys. I'll put the Branson West Marine link in the description. Give them a call, ask for Robbie. Tell him I told you to call, get set up with a good deal. And whoever buys this, guys, I'll take you out on Table Rock Lake myself, run it around, show you guys all the bells and whistles on it. So appreciate all that there. Okay, guys, how do you go about this? What's the process of going about practicing or figuring out how to catch some fish in the tournament? First of all, one of the things that is great about, I guess, fishing in 2026 is you got a lot of different resources in terms of what you can do to assimilate information before you go fishing. And one of the things that I always try to do, like I did, last night, I was trying to get a feel for what the lake level is and sort of what the, how much water's been coming in the lake, water visibilities and that type of stuff, and the water temperature. And once I find out like the water temperature, water level, water clarity, time of year, that gives me a good idea what's gonna be working specifically. Like right now here in Missouri, we're starting to get water temperatures up in the anywhere between the mid to upper 50s in that range there. So that's going to tell me we're sort of in the late pre-spawn phase. Now this is one of the things that's critical, guys, is when you practice for a tournament or going or whatever, is you try to identify the stage that the bass are in, regardless of the time of year. I don't care if it's like, post-spawn, early summer, early fall, mid-fall, winter. That gives you a good indication of where you need to attack everything. And of course, we're talking about real bass fishing. I'm not talking about getting out there in the middle of the lake and putting down a live scope transducer and just looking for, roamer fish. I'm talking about real traditional bass fishing, movements, patterns, seasonal behaviors, that type of stuff. The fun way to fish. Okay, so given this, I'll just sort of run through how I'm going to approach this tournament, and that sort of gives you a good idea, and I'll throw in some other tips there. I know since the water temperature is not 60, these fish are getting close. They're getting close and they want to get ready to spawn. That's on their biological rhythm, but they're not there yet. So they are not going to be in those spawning type areas at this point. They're going to be in those staging type areas. So the things that I'm going to look for, like today, is I'm going to try to identify where I believe the fish want to spawn at. I know the lake very well, so it depends how well you know the lake. If you don't know the lake well, you can do what I'm talking about here on a map. But if you do know the lake well, you can do it from your own memory. So I'm going to locate some areas, some key spawning areas where I know the bass spawn at, and I'm going to move out away from those areas to the nearest what I call pre-spawn staging type areas. So, for example, here in the Ozarks, if you've got a cove that the bass spawn in, those staging areas are going to be most of the time like the points in the area that are closest to that spawning area, whether it be main lake or secondary points. Those points are prime staging areas. So I'm going to be concentrating, some of my day on points today. And a lot of the things about point fishing, guys, it depends on your weather patterns, because sometimes bass can live on points, but they don't activate unless you have a certain set of conditions. Like I have found during the pre-spawn, you need sort of those nasty windy days for those bass to really fire up on points. I've caught them on calm days fishing deeper, but I really prefer to see like some type of wind where I can catch them on a moving power bait in the pre-spawn. Now points are going to be a favorite area, and then Other areas are going to be like channel banks and nearby bluff banks, steeper structures that those fish will stage on. And I'm going to be looking to catch them on a mix of power baits and slow baits. I mean, I'll try some crankbaits, some jerk baits, maybe some swim baits. If it's tough and I can't get them chasing, I may slow down, with the shaky head or football head jig. But my plan for today is to focus on those pre-spawn type staging areas. Now, that is one of the things that's been my approach with it. So if you're not fishing a tournament, say you're just out fishing for fun, and you want to plan your day and try to figure out how to do it, one of the biggest things that you have to remember is that you can't fish everything in a day's fishing. I mean, most of the time you're going to have 6 to 8 hours of fishing, and you've got a limited amount of tackle, so you sort of have to make a game plan on the area that you want to fish. So one of the things that will really help you eliminate a lot of water when you're trying to find fish in a tournament or just fishing for fun is do a little map study. And one of the best ways that you can do that for getting ready is to either get on Google Earth or get on Navionics web app on your computer. Yeah, that is technology, but it's not, don't try to equate it to forward-facing sonar, because it's not. It's just showing you a map of the lake. And what you can look for is you can try to identify what those seasonal areas are going to be, and then you can sort of commit and narrow the lake down. So say, for example, you guys are fishing, I don't know, Lake Lanier in Georgia, or wherever you're fishing, man-made lake. I mean, you look at that lake, and based upon the time of the year, one of the easiest ways to find bass is to pick out a major creek arm in that part of the lake. So say, for example, if I was on Lanier and it was wintertime or cold water, I'd be on the lower end of the lake looking for those, major creeks. If it was the little bit warmer, like in the springtime of the year, I may be up in the mid-lake looking for those creeks. And if it was the summertime or the dog days of summer or early fall, I may be farther up the lake, looking for those creeks in more off-colored water. That's just my approach. But the main thing is what I'm going to say is just pick out 1 or 2 major creek arms in the lake and make that your lake for the day. Don't try to fish a bunch of stuff. So once you've identified, say you've taken the time and you figured out, okay, this creek positioned in this part of the lake is there's got to be fish here. Everything, is conducive to that. Launch your boat in that creek. Usually most creeks have a ramp you can get into, and make that your lake for the day. So in other words, instead of fishing a 45,000 acre Lake Lanier, you've narrowed it down to a 500 acre creek. So your 500 acre Lake Lanier is what you have to figure out that particular day. And then again, based upon the time of the year and the patterns, you want to put together some type of a plan as far as running the water that's in there. And one of the best ways you can do that quickly is, once you're in your creek, just take some time and make a lap around the creek in your boat. And you can see what type of options you have. You can see if there's many docks in there, if there's much shoreline cover, the angle of the bank, the type of the banks, bluff banks, gravel banks, points, whatever. And then that gives you an option to start the day. So one of the quickest ways that you can do that is just start out with something that you think may work. If it's fall time or something like that and the wind's blowing, you got a lot of wind coming in on there, maybe some type of a spinnerbait or topwater is going to work. And maybe you work some windy banks. Try that for a little bit. If that works, fine. If that doesn't work, then you make another adjustment with it. Instead of the, steeper banks, go to a flatter bank. If that doesn't work, what's your other options? Flip a few boat docks, put on a shaky head or jig and try half a dozen boat docks. See if that works. If that doesn't work, get off some secondary points and throw a walking topwater. But try to identify what you think is the main seasonal techniques for the time of the year that you're there, and then just fish the available cover that you have. Let me give you guys another example. It's like, let's say you're fishing in 3 weeks from now, the mid part of April, where most of the bass are spawning across the country. At that point, I know the fish are going to be bedding or looking for bedding or close to be bedding, so I'm going to look for those spawning type areas, and I may take like a shaky head or a wacky rig or something like that and fish nothing but flatter, hard bottom spawning type areas. And I may run 10 of those type of areas in a day until I either locate the fish or don't locate the fish. But bass fishing, when you're trying to locate fish, whether for fun or in a tournament, it's just a process of elimination. And that's what you have to tell yourself, and especially if you're having a tough time. Let's say you're struggling and you're not catching many. Every time you feel that, just say, well, I've tried this and that, I'm getting that much closer to figuring it out. That's all it is. It's not that difficult in terms of just process of elimination. And usually that process of elimination takes place in a couple different forms. The bass either want, number one, a reaction lure, like a crankbait or spinnerbait or something that moves horizontal through the water column, or they don't want a chasing reaction bait and they want to stay on the bottom, which is a shaky head jig, football head jig, Texas rigworm, whatever. Once you determine if a bass is in a chasing mood or a non-chasing mood, that really refines your lure patterns. And then you can go on and take those lure patterns and figure out the depth that the fish are in, the type of structure, all of it's based upon water temperature and water clarity. So every single lake fish is different, guys. It's not like I can give you like a foolproof, pattern across the board, because if you fish here in Missouri at Table Rock Lake, it's going to be completely different than if you fish Toledo Bend Lake. I mean, every lake has characteristics unique to its own, but probably the best advice I can give you guys is research the lake before you get there. There's a lot of information online, and then narrow the lake down. Don't try to make it too overwhelming. Try to cut it down in a manageable size. And once you do that, you're going to notice your consistency really, begins to improve, and you'll have a lot more better days than bad days. So anyway, guys, I'm getting ready to hit the lake. We'll check in later. I'll give you guys, I'm going to be doing my on the water, I'm going to try to do some on the water videos, but I'll be giving you guys my practice report today and the rest of the week and for the tournament. So we'll talk later.